Olivia stood in the kitchen, wiping sweat from her forehead as she finished washing the last dish in a long pile. The scent of dish soap mixed with the stale air of the restaurant kitchen. It was the end of yet another long, exhausting day at the King's Crown, a high-end restaurant she had been working at for 2 months. As she stepped back from the sink and let out a sigh of relief, the weight of her exhaustion settled in. She had made it through another shift, but her relief was short-lived because the daily grind was endless. Working at the fancy restaurant was demanding. Olivia's responsibilities extended far beyond dishwashing. She was also tasked with taking out the garbage and sweeping the restaurant's patio every morning. The janitor was responsible only for cleaning the main entrance, leaving Olivia to clean the rest of the establishment. She had become accustomed to these tasks, though they left her physically drained at the end of each shift. Despite putting in long hours and working tirelessly, Olivia's pay was barely enough to cover her rent and provide for her 2 children, Noah and Liam. The modest salary she received could barely stretch to meet her needs, and she was always left with a feeling of inadequacy. Her children were the heart of her life. Raising them as a single mother had been challenging, especially after the death of her husband, Wyatt. Before his tragic accident, Wyatt had worked as a taxi driver, earning what he could to support their small family. But the money he brought in was never enough. Olivia had tried to get a job after Wyatt's death, but it had been difficult. As a mother of 2 young children, she had to take whatever job she could find, even if it didn't pay well. She started working as a street flyer distributor, running from door to door, handing out advertisements to anyone she could reach. Though this job brought in a meager income, it didn't give her the financial stability she so desperately needed. The decision to work at the restaurant had come as a stroke of luck. Although the pay was still low, it was a significant improvement over her previous work. Olivia was grateful for the opportunity, but the struggle never seemed to end. There was never enough money to buy everything her family needed. Her sons, despite being young, often faced teasing from other children at school for their family's modest lifestyle. They wore simple clothes, practical trousers, and cheap cotton shirts. And when those clothes tore, Olivia would mend them, herself instead of buying new ones. Her sons never complained, but she knew the ridicule they endured was painful. Despite the constant struggles, Olivia remained strong for her children. She kept a brave face, trying her best to hide the stress she felt from them. She couldn't afford to buy new clothes for herself, but she made sure her children had what they needed. At times, she would have to skip meals to ensure they had enough to eat, always giving them the last of what little food she had. Her heart broke when she saw how they struggled with their classmates' cruel comments. The pain of seeing her children go without, knowing they were judged by others for their family's financial situation, was unbearable. Olivia often wished she could provide more, especially for them to experience a better life, free from the constant cycle of poverty. But it was a harsh reality that she couldn't escape from. Every day she reminded herself that she had to keep going for her children's sake. The restaurant, though demanding, provided a brief respite from her struggles. At least there, she could focus on her work and escape, even if just for a few hours, from the relentless weight of her financial burdens. But even there, the tension of barely scraping by followed her, never allowing her to relax fully. Each day was a fight to get by, and Olivia was determined to push through it all, for her children, for her family, and for herself. But as the days passed, the fear and stress weighed heavier. Olivia's exhaustion was evident in her movements, her slumped shoulders, and the way she spoke to her children with a tired yet loving voice. No matter how much she tried, though, the cycle of poverty and struggle seemed never-ending. She longed for a chance to catch her breath, but each day demanded more from her than the last. She was used to the grind, but inside, she couldn't shake the thought that there had to be more than this. A better life for her children. A life where they didn't have to suffer. But in that moment, all she could do was endure and hope that something better would come along, even if just a small spark of light in the darkness. Olivia's life had always been filled with hard truths, but none more difficult than the one she faced after Wyatt's death. Her husband's tragic accident, which took him away from her and their young children, was a devastating blow. For years, Olivia and Wyatt had worked together to make ends meet. Wyatt, as a taxi driver, worked long, exhausting hours, often breaking the rules to take on illegal rides in a desperate attempt to earn extra money. His dedication to their family was unwavering, and despite all his efforts, they never seemed to catch a break. Wyatt's death left Olivia in a state of shock and deep sorrow. She had never anticipated being a single mother, having to raise their twin sons, Noah and Liam, without the support of her loving husband. With Wyatt gone, Olivia was left to pick up the pieces of their broken life. Her grief was compounded by the overwhelming responsibility of supporting her children alone. The weight of her husband's absence seemed to hang over her like a dark cloud that refused to lift. Despite the emotional toll, Olivia had to keep moving forward. She had no choice but to become the sole provider for her family. In the early days after Wyatt's death, Olivia found herself struggling not just emotionally, but financially. She was unable to afford a proper burial for her husband, let alone take time off to grieve. She pushed through the pain and exhaustion, determined to provide for her children. To make ends meet, Olivia took on a variety of low-paying jobs. She began delivering flyers and free newspapers, walking the streets twice a day, rain or shine. The pay was minimal, but it was all she could do. There were times when she would wake up in the morning and feel like she couldn't face another day. But for the sake of Noah and Liam, she kept going. Her children were her anchor, the only thing that kept her going through the long, sleepless nights and grueling days. As if the emotional weight wasn't enough, Olivia also had to deal with the harsh reality of poverty. Their home was small and worn down, and her children often had to wear clothes that were far too old or ill-fitting. There was never enough money to buy new clothes for them, so Olivia would mend their torn shirts and trousers, trying to make them presentable. It hurt her to see them embarrassed at school when they were teased by their wealthier classmates. The insults about their family's financial situation cut deep. They were often mocked for their simple clothes, and Olivia could do little to protect them from the cruelty of others. Noah and Liam, despite being so young, understood their family's struggles. They saw their mother's exhaustion and heard the cruel words of their classmates. Yet, they never complained. They were both good boys, full of love for their mother, and Olivia was determined to give them the best she could, even if that meant sacrificing her own needs. She often went without food, making sure they had enough to eat. The last thing Olivia wanted was for her children to feel deprived or unloved. But no matter how hard she worked, it never seemed to be enough. She could never escape the constant worry of how to make ends meet. There were days when Olivia would go to bed hungry, hoping that tomorrow would bring in a little more money. But there was no end to the struggle. She tried to stay hopeful, but the reality of their situation often felt suffocating. The dream she had for her children, of seeing them attend a good school, of giving them the opportunities she never had, seemed so far out of reach. Yet, in the midst of all this, Olivia found a way to keep going. Despite her exhaustion, despite the pain and sadness that lingered in her heart, she pushed forward every single day. She had no choice. Her children relied on her, and she couldn't afford to let them down. They were the reason she woke up each morning, the reason she continued to fight against the overwhelming tide of hardship that seemed to be pushing her under. Her resilience, though tested to the limits, never faltered. She wasn't just surviving, she was fighting for her children's future. Every sacrifice she made, every long hour spent working to make ends meet was for them. She dreamed of a better life for Noah and Liam, one where they wouldn't have to face the same struggles she did. She knew that the road ahead would be difficult, but she refused to give up on them. They were her world, and as long as they needed her, she would keep fighting. One evening, as Olivia worked her shift at the King's Crown, she noticed something that would change her life in ways she hadn't anticipated. After a particularly busy night of serving high-end dishes to the wealthy patrons, Olivia was left alone to clean up. Her hands were sore, and her feet ached, but she kept going, knowing that every dish she washed brought her one step closer to the end of her shift. The kitchen was filled with the lingering smells of rich foods, spices, fresh herbs, roasted meats, and the atmosphere was thick with the tiredness of another long day. As Olivia wiped down the counters, her eyes wandered to a corner of the kitchen. There, next to the trash bin, sat several plates of leftover food. It wasn't unusual to find leftovers in the kitchen. After all, the guests often couldn't finish their lavish meals. But what caught Olivia's attention that evening was how much of the food had been left untouched. There were appetizers, full portions of pasta, bowls of soup, and even side dishes like mashed potatoes and broccoli, all paid for food, now abandoned by guests who simply couldn't finish it. Olivia's stomach growled, the noise loud in the quiet kitchen. She hadn't eaten since the previous night, and the little porridge she managed to scrape together for dinner hadn't been nearly enough. She hadn't been able to afford much, more than that, as the last of the groceries had been used up days ago. The thought of feeding her children one more meal of watery porridge made her heart ache. They deserved so much better. She looked at the leftovers again. Most of the food was still fresh, untouched by the guests' forks or knives. The restaurant's policy was to throw away uneaten food, but to Olivia, it seemed like such a waste. These were meals that had been paid for, and they could still be eaten. Her children had gone to bed hungry the night before, and she knew they would go to bed hungry again tonight if nothing changed. Without thinking, Olivia grabbed a couple of empty plastic containers from the refrigerator. She moved quickly, almost furtively, transferring the untouched food into the containers. She knew that no one would miss it. After all, the guests who had left it behind were wealthy enough not to care. The thought of taking it felt like a quiet rebellion, but in her heart she knew she wasn't doing anything wrong. This food was going to be thrown out anyway, and she could use it to feed her children. She was certain the restaurant wouldn't lose any money over it. It wasn't stealing. It was simply salvaging food that would otherwise go to waste. Olivia's heart raced as she sealed the containers and placed them in her bag. She had to hurry, not because she feared being caught, but because she was afraid someone might see her and judge her. She didn't want to face the shame of taking food, even if it was technically a leftover, even if it was for her children. She was already ashamed of how little she could provide for them, and this small act felt like another reminder of just how far her family had fallen. That evening, when she arrived home, her sons, Noah and Liam, were waiting for her. Their faces brightened when they saw the containers of food she had brought. Olivia couldn't remember the last time she had seen them so excited about a meal. They sat at the kitchen table, eagerly devouring the food. For the first time in weeks, they had more than just the bare minimum. Olivia watched them eat, her heart swelling with a mixture of relief and happiness. They were full, their faces flushed with health as they savored each bite. They weren't starving anymore. They were finally eating a proper meal. Olivia sat quietly, her own stomach still aching from hunger. But she couldn't bring herself to eat much. She didn't need to. Watching her sons eat to their heart's content was enough to fill her with a deep, quiet joy. For once, she felt like she had done something right. She had taken care of them. She had given them something they truly deserved, a full belly and a moment of happiness. The next evening, the pattern repeated. Olivia continued to bring home the leftover food, carefully choosing what had clearly been abandoned by guests. She never took anything that looked like it had been prepared for future service. She only took what would have been wasted. She did this in secret, making sure no one knew. The thought of judgment from her co-workers, especially the waitstaff and chef, kept her on edge. But the thought of her children's smiles made the risk feel worth it. Each day, as she watched her children eat better and grow healthier, Olivia felt a small sense of hope stirring inside her. It wasn't much, but it was something. For the first time in a long while, Olivia allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, things could get better. Maybe the future wouldn't always be this hard. For now, she was taking care of her children, one meal at a time. And in that small victory, she found a renewed sense of purpose, a glimmer of hope that perhaps the cycle of struggle could be broken. As the days passed, Olivia continued her quiet routine of taking home the leftovers from the King's Crown. Each evening, she would discreetly pack away the untouched meals that customers had left behind, making sure to only take what would otherwise be thrown away. It was a silent rebellion, a small act of survival in the face of overwhelming hardship. She never allowed herself to think too much about it, because the weight of the world already seemed too heavy to bear. When Olivia returned home, her sons, Noah and Liam, were always waiting for her. Their faces lit up with excitement at the sight of the containers filled with food. For the first time in weeks, they were eating more than just plain porridge or the occasional leftover scraps from their mother's meager meals. This food was different. It was rich, full of flavors they had never tasted before. Cheese, pasta, roast meats, fresh vegetables, foods they had only seen on the plates of the wealthy restaurant guests. Olivia watched them eat with a quiet joy. The sight of them devouring the food was a moment of pure happiness for her, something she hadn't experienced in a long time. As they ate, their cheeks flushed with health, the color slowly returning to their faces. It was as if a weight had been lifted from their shoulders, a burden she had been carrying for them finally being eased, even if just for that evening. She couldn't eat much herself, though. Her stomach still twisted with hunger, but she was content. Watching her children eat to their heart's content was enough. For so long, she had been sacrificing her own needs for theirs, skipping meals, and going without. But now, for the first time in a while, she felt that she had done something right. She had given them a meal that would fill them up, a meal they could truly enjoy. Noah and Liam were blissfully unaware of where the food came from. They had no idea that it was not from the grocery store, nor did they know the lengths their mother had gone to ensure they wouldn't have to go to bed hungry. They simply knew that for the first time in a while, they could enjoy a proper meal. Their smiles, their laughter as they ate together, were all Olivia needed to feel that she had done something meaningful. The next evening, Olivia repeated her ritual. She went back to the restaurant, took the leftover food, and brought it home. It became a routine for her, one that she clung to as a way to provide for her children. Each day felt like a struggle, but this small act, this tiny victory in the midst of hardship, gave her a sense of control, a sense of purpose. The food, though simple, became a symbol of Olivia's resilience. She knew she was not stealing. She was simply taking what would have been discarded, what was going to be wasted anyway. In her mind, it was a way to ensure that her children didn't have to suffer any longer. She was doing what any mother would do to provide for her children, even if it meant bending the rules a little. As the days turned into weeks, Olivia saw a noticeable change in her sons. Their health improved and their energy returned. They were no longer thin, pale versions of themselves, but vibrant and full of life. They had a sparkle in their eyes again, and Olivia felt a sense of pride that she had been able to give them that. She couldn't afford the luxury of buying them new clothes or the latest toys, but she could give them the one thing they needed most: food. It wasn't just about feeding them. It was about restoring their dignity. Noah and Liam had been the targets of cruel taunts at school, their classmates teasing them for being poor and making fun of their worn-out clothes. Olivia knew the pain those words caused her children, and it broke her heart every time they came home upset. But now, when they sat down to eat, they weren't thinking about their clothes or the judgments of others. They were simply enjoying the food in front of them, grateful for what they had. In those moments they were happy, and that made it all worthwhile. Olivia, however, still couldn't shake the feeling that she was doing something wrong. Though she knew the food she took home was discarded, and that it would have gone to waste, she still felt the weight of secrecy pressing down on her. She kept the ritual hidden, knowing that if anyone found out, if the restaurant owners or her co-workers knew, they would judge her. But for now, her focus was solely on her children, and nothing else seemed more important than making sure they didn't have to go to bed hungry again. In the quiet moments after her sons had finished eating, Olivia would sit with them, her heart swelling with both pride and sorrow. She was giving them more than just food. She was giving them a chance to grow, to thrive, and to feel loved. That was all she could do, and in that, she found the strength to face another day. Her children's smiles were the only reward she needed. Olivia's life, though filled with struggles, had settled into a predictable pattern. The days blurred together, each one much like the last. The work at the restaurant was exhausting, but it was steady, and it allowed her to take care of Noah and Liam. However, as time passed, a shift began to take place that Olivia didn't expect. A new chapter in her life was about to unfold, one that would challenge her beliefs and bring about significant change. The change came when Stephen Brooks, a young and ambitious businessman, took over the King's Crown. The restaurant, once a local staple, now had a new owner, someone eager to make a name for himself and ensure the restaurant's success. Olivia, who had been working at the restaurant for months, didn't think much of the new owner at first. But she quickly learned that Stephen was very different from the previous owner. He had a sharp business mind and a deep fear of theft. In an attempt to secure the restaurant, he installed several hidden cameras to monitor not only the kitchen, but also the staff. Stephen's obsessive desire for control wasn't something Olivia had expected. He became so focused on preventing theft that he spent hours reviewing the footage from the cameras, watching his employees with intense scrutiny. Olivia had no idea that she was being watched. She continued her routine, taking the leftover food from the restaurant, thinking no one would notice. After all, the guests who left the food behind were wealthy, and the food was destined to be thrown away. But Stephen was paying attention. One evening, while reviewing the footage from the cameras, he saw something that caught him off guard. He watched as Olivia, once again, took leftover food from the kitchen and left with it. To him, this was not just an innocent act. It looked like theft. Furious at the sight of it, Stephen decided to confront Olivia, assuming the worst. He didn't know her story, nor did he understand her situation. To him, it appeared as though she was taking advantage of the restaurant's generosity. In a fit of anger, Stephen summoned Fred, the chef, to his office. He pointed at the video footage and demanded answers. Fred, who had worked at the restaurant for years, was visibly shocked by Stephen's reaction. He hadn't realized the new owner would take such drastic measures. Fred, after all, knew Olivia's routine. He understood that the food she took wasn't worth much to the wealthy patrons who had left it behind. It was all destined to be thrown away, so why not let Olivia take it? Fred, trying to make sense of the situation, hesitantly defended Olivia. These leftovers were just going to be discarded. "We get paid for the food regardless," he explained. But Stephen was not appeased. He couldn't understand why she would take the food, no matter the circumstances. To him, it was still stealing, and he needed to stop it before it became a bigger issue. Determined to get to the bottom of things, Stephen decided to take matters into his own hands. He found Olivia's address and, without thinking twice, drove to her home. He had no idea what he would say, but he rehearsed his speech in his head, ready to confront her and put an end to her actions. When he arrived at her modest home, he was taken aback. The neighborhood was run down, and the house itself seemed worn and struggling. As Olivia opened the door, she was just as surprised to see him. She had no idea who Stephen was, having never met the new owner of the restaurant. Stephen quickly introduced himself, offering a half-hearted apology for showing up at her door unannounced. He wanted to speak to her, to understand why she was taking the food. Olivia, though confused, invited him in. As they stepped inside, Stephen couldn't help but notice the condition of the house. The wallpaper sagged in places, and there was an old lamp flickering in the corner. It was nothing like the luxury he was accustomed to. He could see that Olivia and her children lived in poverty. In the small kitchen, Noah and Liam were sitting at the table, eating the very leftovers Stephen had seen Olivia take. Their faces lit up as they ate, clearly enjoying the food. It was a stark contrast to the empty, hungry look Stephen had witnessed before in his own life. Olivia explained calmly that the food wasn't stolen, it was discarded by the guests who didn't finish it. She had only taken what would have been thrown away, and she never took anything that was intended for other customers. To her, it wasn't about taking food from the restaurant. It was about feeding her children, making sure they had something to eat. Stephen felt a wave of embarrassment wash over him. He had misjudged her. His assumptions about her actions were based on ignorance, and now he saw the truth. She wasn't a thief. She was a mother doing whatever it took to provide for her children. With a deep sense of regret, Stephen apologized to Olivia. He told her he had misunderstood the situation and felt ashamed of how he had judged her. Olivia, ever gracious, accepted his apology without hesitation. She wasn't looking for sympathy, just understanding. As Stephen left her home that evening, he couldn't shake the image of Olivia and her children, sitting together, eating the food she had brought them. Something inside him shifted. For the first time, he saw Olivia not as an employee, but as a woman with a family, struggling to survive in a world that didn't offer her much help. He felt a growing sense of respect for her and an understanding of the difficult choices she had to make every day. That night, Stephen realized that his perspective had changed. Olivia wasn't just a dishwasher at his restaurant. She was a mother, a survivor, and someone who deserved more than just his pity. He didn't know yet what he could do for her, but he knew that from that moment on, he would look at her, and at everyone else in his life, differently. The story was no longer just about the leftovers. It was about understanding, compassion, and seeing the hidden struggles of those who often go unnoticed. Stephen had learned an important lesson that evening, one that would shape the way he ran his business and the way he treated the people around him. The next morning, Stephen woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. The events of the previous night weighed heavily on his mind, but he felt something shifting inside him. He knew he had to do something more for Olivia. She wasn't just a dishwasher in his restaurant. She was a woman doing everything she could to provide for her children. Her resilience, her quiet strength, had affected him deeply. As he got dressed for the day, he couldn't shake the image of Olivia's small, worn-down home and her children, eating the leftovers she had brought them from the restaurant. They were eating with joy, without any awareness of how difficult it was for their mother to provide for them. But Stephen's shift in perspective wasn't just about feeling sorry for Olivia. It was about doing something to change her situation, to show her that there was more to life than struggling day after day. He realized that he needed to take action. So, as the day went on and he prepared for another long shift at the restaurant, he decided that he would visit Olivia again. But this time, it would be different. He wasn't going there to confront her. He wasn't going there to lecture her or judge her. He was going to offer her something more, something that would change the course of her life and the lives of her children. Later that evening, after finishing a long day at the restaurant, Stephen made his way to Olivia's home. He drove through the city streets, his mind racing with thoughts of what he might say, how he could help her. He had no plan in mind, only a deep desire to make things right. He wasn't sure what kind of welcome he would receive. After all, she had no reason to trust him. Their previous encounter had been awkward, and Olivia had likely felt judged and scrutinized by his earlier visit. When Stephen arrived at Olivia's house, he felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He wasn't sure how she would react to seeing him again, especially after the way he had confronted her the night before. He knocked on the door, and when Olivia answered, her expression was one of surprise. She had clearly not expected him to return. "Good evening, Olivia," Stephen began, his voice soft. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything." Olivia stepped back, allowing him inside. The evening light from the street filtered in through the window, casting a warm glow on the modest interior of her home. Stephen couldn't help but notice the small, humble details, the mismatched furniture, the worn-out rug, and the small kitchen where her children had sat just the night before, eating the food she had brought home. It was nothing extravagant, but it was home, a home that Olivia had worked hard to maintain. Stephen cleared his throat, unsure of how to begin. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened yesterday," he said, his words slow and measured. "I want to apologize again for how I treated you. I misunderstood everything. I assumed the worst when I should have been more understanding." Olivia nodded, a quiet acceptance in her eyes. She wasn't angry, but Stephen could see that she had been through enough hardship to not be surprised by people's judgments. "It's all right," she said gently. "I understand. You were just doing your job." "But that's not the point," Stephen replied, his voice firming. "The point is, I was wrong, and I want to make it right. I want to help you." Olivia looked at him, her brow furrowed slightly. "Help me? How?" Stephen took a deep breath. He knew this wasn't going to be easy, but he was determined. "I've seen what you've been going through. I've seen how hard you work, how much you sacrifice for your children. I know you don't have a lot, but I want to change that. I want to help you and your family. I've been thinking about how I can assist you, how I can give you something more than just an apology." For a moment, Olivia was silent, unsure of what to say. No one had ever offered her help like this before. Her instinct was to refuse, to insist that she didn't need charity. But Stephen wasn't offering charity. He was offering something else. A chance. A lifeline. "What are you suggesting?" Olivia asked, her voice quiet, almost hesitant. "I want to make sure you and your children have what you need. I don't want you to struggle anymore," Stephen said, his tone earnest. "I want to help with the food, but I also want to do more. I can offer you a raise at the restaurant. You deserve it. And I'd like to help you with other things. Things that will make your life easier, whatever it takes." Olivia's heart skipped a beat. She had never been in a position where someone genuinely wanted to help her. The offer felt overwhelming, and she wasn't sure if she could accept it. But as she looked into Stephen's eyes, she saw something different. Sincerity, compassion, and a desire to make a real difference in her life. "I don't know what to say," Olivia replied, her voice shaking slightly. "I've never had anyone offer me something like that before. I don't want to take advantage of you." Stephen smiled softly. "You're not taking advantage. You're just accepting help when you need it. And trust me, you deserve it. No one should have to struggle like this, especially not you." Olivia looked at him for a long moment, and in that silence, something shifted. She realized that this wasn't just about money or food. It was about dignity. It was about being seen, being recognized for the hard work she had done, and for the sacrifices she had made for her family. For the first time in a long time, Olivia felt as though someone truly understood her. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to," Stephen replied. "Just let me help. I'll be here for you." As Stephen left her home that evening, he felt a sense of fulfillment that he hadn't expected. He had started the day uncertain, but by the time he drove away from Olivia's house, he felt a sense of clarity. He had done the right thing, and in helping Olivia, he knew that he had also started to heal a part of himself that had been closed off for far too long. This was only the beginning of a new chapter for both of them, and Stephen was determined to be a part of it. The following morning, Stephen woke up feeling different. He couldn't shake the image of Olivia's humble home, the worn-out furniture, and the joy on her children's faces as they devoured the food she had brought them. For the first time, he had seen the true strength in her, the quiet resilience of a mother doing whatever it took to make sure her children had something to eat. He realized then that it wasn't just about the food or the charity. It was about giving Olivia and her children a real chance to break free from the struggle they were facing every day. Stephen knew he had to do something to help. The previous evening, as he had left Olivia's home, he had made a promise to himself that he would not let her go on living like this. The more he thought about her situation, the more he realized that he had the power to make a difference, not just through his role as the restaurant owner, but by offering her something more: stability, opportunity, and a chance at a better life. He spent the next several hours thinking of how he could help. By the time he arrived at the restaurant that afternoon, Stephen had made up his mind. He was going to do more than just offer Olivia a raise. He was going to give her the resources she needed to change her life, to relieve her of the constant pressure she had been under. But he knew he had to approach this carefully. He didn't want to make Olivia feel like she was being pitied. This was about offering her the chance to thrive, not just survive. Later that day, he approached the kitchen, where Olivia was busy washing the last set of plates. She didn't notice him at first, and he stood there, watching her for a moment. Despite the exhaustion on her face, there was something graceful in the way she moved, as if she had grown accustomed to carrying heavy burdens, yet still managed to hold herself with dignity. Stephen took a deep breath before walking over to her. "Olivia," he began, his voice steady but warm. "Can I talk to you for a minute? I'd like to discuss something important." She looked up in surprise, wiping her hands on a towel. "Of course, Mr. Brooks. What's going on?" Stephen could tell that Olivia was apprehensive, probably wondering if she had done something wrong, but he was determined to make this right. "I've been thinking about our conversation last night," he started. "About you, your children, and everything you've been going through. I know you've been struggling, and I can't just stand by and do nothing." Olivia raised an eyebrow, clearly curious but unsure of where this conversation was headed. "What do you mean, sir?" she asked. "First of all, I want to apologize again," Stephen continued, feeling a twinge of guilt, "for the way I treated you before. I judged you without understanding your situation, and I was wrong. You've been doing everything you can to take care of your family, and you deserve so much more than what you've been given." Olivia nodded, her expression calm but her eyes filled with uncertainty. "Thank you, Mr. Brooks," she said softly. But you don't have to apologize. I understand. It's been hard for me, but I'm just trying to get by like anyone else. Stephen smiled. I understand. But that's exactly why I want to help. You don't have to do this alone anymore. I want to offer you more than just a raise. I want to make sure that you and your children are taken care of. Olivia blinked in surprise, her brows furrowing slightly as she processed his words. What are you saying? She asked, still not fully grasping the gravity of what he was offering. Stephen took a deep breath. I'm offering you a better position at the restaurant, a raise, of course, but also something more. I want to help you with your children, with your housing situation. I can't imagine how hard it must be for you to juggle everything, but I want to make sure you don't have to struggle so much anymore. Olivia was speechless for a moment, trying to process the enormity of what Stephen was offering. You want to help me with my children? She whispered, her voice barely audible. Yes, Stephen replied, his voice firm but kind. I want to make sure that they don't have to go without anymore. I don't want you to worry about feeding them or about the things they need. I want to help provide that for you. Olivia's eyes began to well up with tears, though she quickly wiped them away. She had been so used to fighting for every little bit of help that the idea of someone offering her so much was overwhelming. She had never asked for charity, never wanted to feel like a burden to anyone. But now, Stephen was offering her a lifeline, a chance to breathe, to focus on what truly mattered, her children's well-being. I don't know what to say, Olivia said, her voice choked with emotion. I've never had anyone offer me anything like this. I don't want to take advantage of you. Stephen shook his head, stepping closer to her. You're not taking advantage, Olivia. You're accepting help when you need it, and you deserve it. You've been through so much, and I want to make sure you don't have to carry that burden alone anymore. Olivia's heart swelled with gratitude, but there was still a small voice of hesitation in her mind. I don't know how to repay you, she said softly. This is too much. Stephen smiled warmly, his gaze filled with genuine care. You don't have to repay me. All I want is for you and your children to be happy. I'll do whatever it takes to make that happen. Overwhelmed by the offer, Olivia could hardly believe what she was hearing. This wasn't just a raise or a handout. It was an opportunity for her to build a better future, one where she didn't have to fear the next bill or the next empty meal. For the first time in years, Olivia allowed herself to imagine a life where she didn't have to fight every day just to survive. As she looked at Stephen, she felt a wave of relief wash over her. He had given her a gift she never thought possible. Hope. Thank you, she whispered, her voice full of gratitude. Thank you for everything. Stephen nodded, a smile tugging at his lips. It's my pleasure, Olivia. I'm just glad I can help. And with that, a new chapter began for Olivia and her children. A chapter filled with new opportunities, hope, and a brighter future. One where they could finally leave the struggle behind and begin to thrive. Stephen had come a long way since that first confrontation with Olivia. What had begun as an angry accusation and misunderstanding had transformed into something much deeper, a connection built on respect, understanding, and a shared desire for a better future. He had seen Olivia for who she truly was, a mother willing to do anything to provide for her children, working tirelessly to overcome the hardships life had thrown her way. In helping her, Stephen realized that he, too, was beginning to heal. from his own wounds, and for the first time in years, he felt like he was making a difference. The next morning, Stephen was in a surprisingly good mood. It was a bright, crisp day, and the sun seemed to shine a little brighter as he walked into the King's Crown that morning. He had a newfound sense of purpose, one that was driven by more than just business success. He wanted to make a real impact in people's lives, to ensure that those who worked for him didn't have to face the same struggles he had seen Olivia endure. For the first time, Stephen saw the true value of the people around him, not just as workers, but as human beings with dreams and struggles of their own. The atmosphere in the restaurant was busy, as usual. Fred, the chef, was barking out orders, and the waitstaff moved briskly, taking orders and delivering food to the tables. Stephen took a deep breath, his mind focused on the task ahead. He was ready to make things right for Olivia, but also for the restaurant itself. He wanted to create an environment where everyone, no matter their role, felt valued and respected. As Stephen passed the kitchen, he saw Olivia, as always, bent over a pile of dishes. Her hands were submerged in warm, soapy water, her movements efficient but weary. It was clear that she had worked hard, as she always did. But today, Stephen saw something else in her, a quiet strength that radiated even in the midst of exhaustion. He had offered her a chance at a better life, and now he was going to make sure she had the resources she needed to take it. "Olivia," he called out to her, his voice carrying across the busy kitchen. She turned to him, her face lighting up slightly at the sound of his voice. "Mr. Brooks, is everything okay?" Stephen smiled, his gaze softening. "It's Stephen, remember?" he said with a chuckle. "And yes, everything is great. Actually, I wanted to talk to you." Olivia looked a little concerned, wiping her hands on a towel as she walked over to him. "What's on your mind?" Stephen's expression turned serious, but there was warmth in his eyes. "I've been thinking a lot about you and your children, and I want to do more. You've been working hard, and you deserve so much more than this," he said, gesturing to the kitchen around them. "So, here's what I'm going to do. I'm offering you more than just a raise. I'm giving you the resources to change your life, to give your children the future they deserve." Olivia's eyes widened in surprise, unsure if she had heard him correctly. "What do you mean?" she asked cautiously. Stephen took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. "I know you've been struggling. I know you've been doing everything you can to make ends meet, but you don't have to do it alone anymore. I'm offering you a position here at the restaurant with a significant raise. But beyond that, I want to help you with your children's education, and I want to help with housing. I want to make sure that you're not just surviving, but thriving. I'll be there to support you every step of the way." For a moment, Olivia stood frozen, as though the weight of his words hadn't yet settled in. She had never expected anything like this. She had spent years fighting to provide for her children, doing whatever she could to make sure they were okay. But now, standing in front of Stephen, she realized that her life could be different. She didn't have to carry this burden alone anymore. "Stephen, I don't know what to say," Olivia said, her voice trembling slightly with emotion. "This is more than I ever expected. I've never had anyone offer me anything like this before. I don't want to take advantage of you." Stephen placed a hand gently on her shoulder, his eyes sincere. "Olivia, you're not taking advantage of me. You're accepting the help you deserve. You've worked so hard, and I know how much. You love your children. This is about giving you the chance to rest, to focus on the things that matter most, without constantly worrying about how to make ends meet. You're not alone in this anymore. Tears welled up in Olivia's eyes, but she quickly wiped them away, not wanting to break down in front of him. This offer, this kindness, was something she never imagined she would receive. It felt like a dream she could finally reach for. I don't know how to thank you, Olivia whispered, her voice thick with emotion. There's no need to thank me, Stephen replied softly. Just know that I'm here for you, and I want to see you succeed. You've already proven how strong you are, and now I want to give you the chance to rest, to breathe, and to give your children the life they deserve. Stephen's words filled Olivia with a sense of hope she hadn't felt in years. She had always dreamed of a better life for her children, but she never thought it would come so suddenly, so unexpectedly. In that moment, she realized that this was her new beginning. It wasn't just about the job or the money. It was about the opportunity to rebuild her life, to step away from the constant struggle and build a future filled with possibilities. As she looked into Stephen's eyes, Olivia felt a deep gratitude. Gratitude for the kindness he had shown her and for the chance to create a better life for herself and her children. She had been given a lifeline, and she would hold on to it with everything she had. From that day forward, Olivia's life began to change. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was thriving, and with Stephen's support, she knew that her family's future would be brighter than ever before. And it all began with a generous offer from a man who had seen her for who she truly was, a mother, a fighter, and someone deserving of more than the struggles she had endured.